everybody, and welcome back to Finding Fashion. Today I'm so happy to be joined by Peta Hunt, who is a stylist and consultant. Thank you so much for joining us, Peta.
You're welcome. It's really interesting to do this. So since the magazine I worked on closed, I am now a freelance stylist and also a consultant in bridal. The other job that I do is actually run Hitched Fashion and Style Instagram as well. So it's left over from the previous incarnation on You and Your Wedding. It turned into Hitched, and I'm still doing Instagram. So I'm still there on the fashion front line.
So you seem to be doing so many things, which is amazing. And when we first spoke over email, and I said to myself, I've got to read this out. When we first spoke, you said to me, when I first started styling, there was just me and Caroline Baker. I have 90 million years worth of styling experience. I would love to share some. And I just thought, well, how could I refuse?
That's true, actually. I used to do a lot of catwalk modelling, and then one day I was walking down the catwalk and thought, I'm old enough to be the girl I'm walking with Malta. To stop. So somebody said, oh, you can get like £90 a day for ironing on shoots, because as a model you took all your accessories with you. Yeah. So you have to kind of style yourself anyway. So I thought £90 a day for ironing can't be bad. So I did a catalogue shoot, and the first thing I actually did was the guy gave me something to press. So I ironed this little petticoat, and it had nylon lace on it. I'd never come across nylon lace before, so it just kind of melted. So I was like, oh my God, this is a terrible stuff. So I unpicked it, sewed it back on again, like really quickly, put it on the model, and went back out, and he said, yeah, it looks nice, but really, you need to speed up on the ironing. Yeah, so I never told him till years later. So yeah, Caroline Baker was the editorial guru that everyone looked up to. And I think there was another girl called Angela that used to do the more commercial side, and then I'd do anything else that was left over. It was really funny, but it just grew and grew and grew.
Yeah. So you've established yourself as such a renowned bridal stylist now. How did you carve out that kind of niche for yourself in the industry?
Well, I think basically I used to be a freelance fashion stylist. So I did everything. And then I got asked to do a trip to, I can't even remember, Dominican Republic, Casa de Campo.
Sounds absolutely horrific.
It's fantastic. It's so posh. I think Michael Jackson, it's got its own runway. It's not like the Dominican Republic, you know. So I got invited there to style a bridal shoot. And again, the first thing I did was covered in mosquito repellent, because I'm really mosquito attractive. Nails, doing up buttons, and I suddenly looked down on this dress and see red nail varnish on the back of the buttons, because it had come off because of the mosquito repellent. But it all worked out okay, and I cleaned it up. Everything was okay. But I then realised bridal, you got to go to, it was like doing evening wear every time, except for most of the dresses were white. And you got to go to so many exotic places, far more so. And I had far more control, so the power kicked in. People on You and Your Wedding believed in me, which was lovely, that I could style bridal. And I just thought of it as fashion, but just with bigger dresses.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I've continued to go. It is, I know to the outside people don't think of it as very fashionable, but actually there is a fashion within bridal, and it does change, and you can date a dress. I mean, yeah.
Have you seen how the trends in bridal have really developed and changed over your career? Like, how have they changed?
Yeah, well, for a start off, when I first started, you know, Princess Diana was kind of still those big shoulder dresses, which actually, ironically, there's a lot of shoulders coming back, not quite in the same way, but it was much more formal. You know, it was the groom had to have the waistcoat and the dodgy cravat and the kind of, and I had to shoot models with tights. even when we were in Jamaica, you still put tights on. And then one day I just thought, this is stupid. You can't even see her tights underneath. It was very big. And I think once you started having separates, like a corset you could wear afterwards, that was always a thing. You can wear this corset after, like you would with jeans. I don't know what that was all about, but it was a sort of trend. So big dresses, polyester, and then really designers started to catch on to the fact that if they put a white dress at the end of their catwalk, women might actually like to wear that. So it wasn't all about the old high street, you went where your mother went kind of shop. And more designers got involved in bridal, and I think that's how it's continued. There's still an awful, before I think it was very much almost a mum retired from work and opened a bridal shop. It was very kind of, I know that sounds awful and harsh, but I think people really didn't think very much fashion-wise of bridal. It was almost like, oh yeah, and I'm going to get a wedding dress. There wasn't the kind of thrill and the excitement that there should be. I mean, you should look hot in your dress. The whole point is, this is your moment of kind of walking down the aisle, whether it's in church, you know, in your garden, wherever. That's, you look the best you can be, I think. And I know it's superficial saying it's all about the dress, but for me, it always was about the dress. And then other people.
So why do you think that a lot of designers were kind of reluctant to be involved with bridal before, and then some of them made that transition to designing bridal?
I don't know. I think it was because it was very kind of cottage industry. You know, it didn't seem to have the glamour and pizzazz that evening wear did. And then very slowly, the evening wear designers and the wedding designer, bridal designers kind of merged. And, you know, when you have people like Jenny Pack and Vera Wang, I think Vera Wang had a big part to play, weirdly. She worked at Vogue. She then started to become a bridal designer. And I think that made a huge difference. At one point, Vera Wang was almost synonymous for wedding dress. And then more and more people realized that one dress wouldn't fit all, you know, all different sizes, shapes, personalities. So your wedding dress should say that. It shouldn't be some big blobby blancmange thing that you throw on, you know. But it's fine if you want the big blobby blancmange thing. And I love a big tulle dress. I've got nothing against those either. But, you know, when I think it really, for me, kicked off once I started going to places like Barcelona for Barcelona Bridal Week. All of a sudden, there was real designers there, and each show we'd sit. When we do Barcelona, you're there for a week. You do 8 shows a day. You sit there in your seat. You get Barcelona bum. You have to kind of you start creeping around later in the day, but you sit on your chair. You know your spot. You meet other international press. You exchange trends. You learn so much about the industry, and you come face to face with designers. And they were the first people that I ever saw that put on shows like proper shows. Years ago, I used to do Close Show Live with a producer who's sadly died now, called Leslie Goring, and we used to do those massive shows that everybody loved.
It was so good. I love
they were good. I love those. But when we went to Barcelona, this is the first time that people were they had, you know, models that looked great. They had high production values. I know a lot of money was pumped in from the Spanish government. However, they did great pictures, so you could utilize them afterwards. They treated bridal fashion as a proper big fashion industry, not just you know, a sideline. And I think that once they started to do that, the whole world woke up to, hello, bridal's not second rate. And if you think about it, it's the most expensive dress most women ever buy.
Yeah.
Or whatever you want.
So you've been so lucky to travel all around the world to various fashion weeks. Yeah. Would you say that Barcelona is the best place to kind of pick out those emerging bridal designers?
Up until COVID, all international designers were coming into Barcelona, you know, so not only were you getting, they'd bring over a designer that would be an amazing one to watch. So they'd have Niam Khan, they'd have, well, they were, I've just gone completely blank on who they did, but every designer was there that you wanted to see. So it was a one-stop visit designers, chat to them, see the amazing shows and pick up on trends. It's all about subtle styling of things. You know, some seasons giant hair bows took off, and so you might not as a real bride walk down your wedding aisle with a giant bow in, but you might have one on your shoulder or on your back or something. So that's how trends seem to transcend because of little styling keys that you pick up in places like that. I think it's very important for the bridal press to get together as well and share their angst and stuff. We're quite a friendly bunch. We all talk to each other, like we talk to brides. There's no kind of, you know, I'd like to say there was loads of fashion rivalry and blanking people, but it wasn't at all like that. Everybody was really friendly and kind of just loving. And they'd all come from fashion as well, which is interesting. I think most of the major editors had come from fashion and kind of were celebrating bridal, not, you know, because it is interesting. So many people work in bridal. It's a really big
huge industry.
It is. Smaller if they don't get some help, but it is a huge industry.
So you talked earlier on a little bit about getting to travel, which is something obviously we're all really looking forward to doing. Yeah. But in terms of work, I was reading that you'd been from everywhere from like Malta to the Maldives, which is insane.
Several times, which is beautiful.
Stop showing off now.
And always beautiful hotels too, because nobody's going to, the thing is, what happens is I might get a press release from a travel PR. We worked very closely with travel PRs because honeymoons are big spends, weddings abroad's a big spends, and just luxury venues. It's the first time people will go to places. So I was quite friendly with a lot of travel PRs, and they'd say, what about this hotel? Now, some hotels are fantastic, but you wouldn't shoot there. Other hotels, you just look at a location. My thing is, if we're going to the Maldives, we've got to vacuum pack all these dresses. I've sat on so many suitcases in my life, it's just not true. So you pack up your dresses, you only take hand luggage because obviously all your allowance has gone on that, the wedding dresses and the accessories, and you head out to, say, the Maldives. When you're there, you don't island hop from one place to another. I always used to make sure that when we went to a location, you could utilize that location. So if you look that way, that's your jungle story. If you look that way, that's your trend story. That way, it's romantic. You can't, when you've got great big dresses that need steaming and need care because they are quite valuable, you can't chuck them in the back of, well, I have done, but I don't like doing it. Chuck them in the back of a van. And the days are gone when you can have, say, you went to Miami and got the biggest Airstream in the world to fill up your, as a location truck that you could fill up. Those budgets no longer exist. So when you try and do 2 stories a day, you try and make it as cost effective as you can. And basically, yeah, I've been really lucky. I've been to, yeah. I've not been to Australia
yet.
No, or New Zealand, both of which I'd like. And there's plenty of places in South America too. Panama, I'd really like to go to, and Cuba. There's so many wonderful places. Having said that, there's some amazing hotels in the UK too, and venues that are incredible. And your day should be a mad celebration, you know, if that's what you want.
So how do the PRs actually approach you and pitch those kind of different locations for you? Like, what is kind of, obviously they want to publicize their venue, but how do they get you there? Because it's one thing to say we've got this amazing hotel, but actually how do they get you there? How do they convince you to shoot there out of anywhere else?
Well, often if they drop me a line, I'll have a look online, and I look at people's Instagrams to see what I can see, and then I kind of talk to the hotel, because they have to make it financially viable. So, you know, meals and accommodation has to be thrown in, because the huge cost is transport, is getting us out there. It's like some location. It's just, I would say, for example, in Scotland, there's some brilliant hotels, brilliant venues, but it costs me an awful lot of money because it's a day and a half travel to get to somewhere. So therefore it doesn't make it as viable. I can go to the Maldives. Airfare is always expensive. Nobody gives free airfares. And the hotels and the venues all get really good feedback post the shoot. So obviously they'll use it on their social. Sometimes they used to try and buy the pictures because it epitomized the hotel and the type of wedding they'd want to do. We just work together. It's almost like a secret part of your shoot team is the hotel PR, because you book your photographer, your makeup artist, the models, and you've got your trusty assistant, and the hotel is the kind of last part of the kind of team, and that's why you have to work together. I would love to have worked with people like James English, who do fantastic production, but I was the producer. The assistant and I were the kind of, let's see how many flights we can get for the cheapest possible, quickest way there. Things like, sometimes it's a difference between whether one airline will give you 24 kilos or 22 kilos. You know, I mean, it's that tight. So yeah, we'd always turn up with our hand luggage, which is basically our wardrobe for a week. Repeat outfits quite often, but as long as you've got your key basics like your mosquito repellent, suntan lotion, and that's fine.
So you spoke there about production, and obviously a huge part of your job as a fashion director is being that producer and organising everything from the flights, as you said, to styling, casting, like art direction, and then obviously working photographer, makeup artist. How do you work to kind of, with all of those kind of different roles, but also with the different people, to pull a shoot together?
Well, normally, for example, I would say if you're doing a studio shoot, it's slightly easier because you book the studio. Well, I book the photographer, then I book the studio. Or in our case, we used to shoot in the cupboard downstairs and just shoot from the corridor and make it look big. But for me, the photographer is key. You know, like, you need to work with someone who gets you, who understands what you need, and also who can do 2 stories a day and understand, or tolerates me going, can we just do one more shoot, or can we turn this into a cover try? Like, you throw it in like it's a big surprise. It's one of those things that I think I love working with certain photographers because we all get on well. They've got to be flexible as well, because if you go somewhere and it's pouring with rain, I don't have the luxury of a weather day. not like on a commercial or anything where you can sit around. We have to proceed. So that might mean the story that we decided to do outside has suddenly got to change and come inside. So it is that flexibility, and it's a willingness to try things, to push without making everyone look scary, because it was a magazine where people actually want inspiration that's translatable to real human beings, if you see what I mean, rather than just mad editorial pictures.
So do you work with kind of mood boarding and things when you're planning shoots? And how do you create those mood boards? Like, what images do you look for if you are creating a mood board?
If I'm creating a mood board, which is actually useful sometimes just as a shorthand process, so I look for great photographers' pictures and then take those, stick them on together. So yeah, it would be Vogue, Harper's, Vanity Fair. I mean, you might as well punch quite high when you're going to do a mood board. And then you throw on a few catwalk shots from of the style of dresses that I was going to utilise. Couple of hair directions, but really with the hairdressers and things, they tend to, I like to work with them once they know who the models are, that they come back to me and go, oh, what about this? Unless it's a particularly, unless we're doing Frida Kahlo or something, or it's a Rapunzel story, then I think we're quite flexible about the hair and makeup. You just want the model to look the best she can within that area. So if you're doing a 30s satin story, maybe she will have a big wave. So I'll grab the odd picture from wherever I can, stick it on a mood board, PDF it out, and that's it. It saves a lot of chat, particularly when you're a small team. And once you phone up someone, you free, and they go, yeah. So you option them, then you work everything around. Sometimes you have to put a couple of days on because editorial pays less than advertising. And I can guarantee the day I option someone, they get the world's biggest advertising job in. So we have to be a bit flexible. It's much harder when I'm limited by a venue. So if a hotel has said, yeah, you can do it on Monday, then I sometimes have to change the photographer, which is not what I want to do. But when you're getting a venue for nothing, you need to work with that. Budget. Who knew when you start off in fashion that XL was going to be your best friend?
Horrible.
Not something I ever wanted to do, ever. But I mean, really, you do need to work to a budget. And we were shooting 36, 40, 48 pages of fashion. A lot of the time. Towards the end, we were just doing 3 stories an issue, but 3 stories an issue, so that's 36 white dresses. So you do have to have a point of difference. So each story will have a theme which will be on that mood board. So they might sound quite, like we'll do drama queen because it's big skirts, boho bride because it's lace, floaty because it's chiffon. Each of those looks, particularly when you go on a trip and have to shoot everything abroad on 2 models and you've got, say, 5 or 6 stories to do, everything has to stand up in its own right and look totally different. You can't just do bridal. It all has to have its own handwriting.
So
therefore, I think...
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, so the photographer and the hairdresser have to be able to be flexible and have flexible styles. You can't just be a one style person when you're doing that number of stories.
How do you go about picking the photographer? Because there's so many amazing ones and you've obviously worked with some incredible photographers. How do you pick which one to work with?
Usually, either I've known them as an assistant and then they progress because I've been doing it a long time, or I often used to ask model agencies, like, who's nice, good, and up and coming, because there's no point in asking really huge established photographers because they've had a good life and they don't want to do, 18 shots in a day or something. So I try and always use people that I enjoy working with. And quite a few women towards the end I was working with. And I found they have a different look. They do sexy, but in a different way to, if you say sexy to a guy, which is quite interesting. That's probably really damning, and I'm sorry to work with, but I just think they have to be flexible and have a great sense of humour. It sounds like a dating site, doesn't it? Good sense of humour, under difficult circumstances, changeable.
That's like what I look for in a man. So you talked there about like having to shoot on a budget and shooting 2 or 3 stories in a day, but obviously you've still got to, or 2 in a day. So you've still got to create that really high quality content and get those really glossy images. What do you think's the key to kind of shooting on a budget but still creating that high quality content?
I think it is teamwork and good preparation. If you've got everybody working to the same agenda, then it's much easier to get the right result at the end. It's got to look luxe, whether the dresses are from ASOS or from Valentino, they still have to come across. So the model has to give that vibe off too. So it's everybody's hair, makeup, photographer, location, and our bloody hard prep work in pulling it all together.
And what do you look for when you're casting models? Because models do, like with all of the trends that you're looking at, you said that every look has to have its own handwriting. How do you almost play match up between trend to model?
I think you have to have someone that's quite flexible again, that will look good with their hair up and their hair down. So they've got that versatility. They look great natural, but then a slick of red lipstick and it transforms them. So model is really important. I couldn't use people that were too moody, because you don't have to smile in every single picture, but you have to have a bit of hope there. You've got to be someone that looks like, and relatable as well. It's very interesting. It's very interesting when you do Instagram, the response you get when someone I think looks fantastically editorial, say on the catwalk, nobody really cares. And you put someone smiling and all of a sudden it differs. So in that way, bridal is slightly different to kind of mainstream fashion in that we do like a cheerful person.
Well, I suppose if you're getting married, you probably want to look like a bit hopeful.
Look like, he is going to turn up, not like he's not turning up. Or she's going to turn up. Someone's turning up somewhere.
So whilst you worked at You and Your Wedding, you were really pivotal in boosting the Instagram following from, what did I read, 18k to 282k, which is absolutely incredible. What do you think, like, what was the key in creating such a successful strategy for social there?
I'd like to thank my team. No, I think strategy was just, again, with bridal, it's slightly different to real other Instagram accounts in that people almost want Instagram, I think, to be like Pinterest in bridal, but with details. So Pinterest for me is a really frustrating beast because you see the best everything, and then you can't find where it's from or what.
Frustrating.
So for me, Instagram, it's just about, we get new people on all the time, on and off, on and off, on and off. You know, it's the life cycle of our reader stroke follower is probably a year to 18 months. So every day you almost have to have another bouquet, cake, dress, venue, bouquet, cake, dress, venue. And you have to almost keep churning it out, almost spamming Instagram, I think, was the main strategy. And giving people kind of what they want to see. Whereas I'd like to see loads of catwalk. I don't think our readers or viewers wanted necessarily loads of catwalk. They do in small doses, but for me, I'd be fascinated about it. So I think you have to know who's looking in and what they're looking for. So you kind of are a bit like a time traveler, because you have to show them the future of what's coming in. So this is the future collections. Then you have to show them what's available now. This is a girl that's got married now, but you're also showing them the past because that's what she wore. Mm-hmm. So you kind of go backwards and forwards in time. And I think that's quite key too, but it's just, you have to do the manicure, the shoes, everything is of interest to someone that's getting married. They're just into that mode of, I'm getting married, so I want to know what nail varnish to wear, what shoes to wear, what underwear, everything. They're all me. And that's what, sorry, that sounds really, but I think it's the one time in your life you are quite me.
You're allowed to, because it is like your day, isn't it?
It is your day, your way.
Yeah.
So therefore, it is about all the things that you can do to make you that little bit better version of you.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said there that you have a turnover of reader of a year to 18 months. I'd never thought about that. And actually it's so, like, now it makes total sense, because obviously that's the planning time for a wedding, isn't it? I never thought that.
All those things are changing, and some people stay with us, and then they comment, they offer their expert advice, which is quite interesting too, that they haven't kind of gone away. I wouldn't want them to go away, but it is interesting that they stay with you. I think the other thing is that everybody likes to go, oh, I love that dress, or don't like that. So I've started to do more of kind of, these are my favorite 5 lace dresses or 5 cakes. Which one do you like, kind of thing? Because it is quite interesting to get the feedback on, again, something you think everyone's going to love, turns out nobody cares.
Yeah.
And it's really sad. When you put up this picture thinking, this is going to break the Insta. And then 6 people go, and then you put up something else and I get 13,000 likes. And it's like, where did that come from?
That's so useful, isn't it? That just goes to show, how, for all of its like negatives, how social media can be so valuable to when you're creating content, is that you can get that direct feedback from your reader.
Yes, I think so. And without trying, I don't mean without trying, but you can start to try and see what you feel that they would want much more instantly than other forms of media. And they don't have to engage, they don't have to, in a sense, they don't have to fill out a form and answer a questionnaire. They either go like that, pass it on, or just look at it. It's not always about likes.
Yeah.
I have to say something. It's that some things do really well that don't appear to have many likes. And then when you look at your stats at the end of the week or whatever, you see that actually that did get quite a big response. And so it is interesting. And also it's not necessarily immediate either. Like 2 days later, you find that something you posted has grown and it didn't appear to do very well to start with. So it's patience, it's trying to understand who you're talking to. It's trying not necessarily to speak their language, but provide things that they want.
Mm-hmm.
I think is lead them in a certain way and show them what's available, but don't dictate to them. I'm not a great, you must wear this because this is, it kind of thing.
Yeah, on Instagram. Because everybody's different, aren't they? And I think, you look at all of these different weddings that take place, and everybody's got their own personality that threads through their wedding. So it's not like a one size fits all vibe, is it? So, and there's so many bridal designers and so many locations and so many like looks to recreate that actually.
I think it's really important that when you decide to get married, you decide what you want. Don't be dictated to by friends. But I think in a weird way with COVID, that weddings will change quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are finding actually that smaller groups within certain sectors are quite good. And I'm almost feeling that it will go back to almost like the village hall, where you have, 20 or 30 people that you actually really like and know quite well come along, or you're eating a nice restaurant that you want to. I think it will become, because it has been more intimate, I think it will, because I think we were following the model of America where, you had the 27-day wedding extravaganza, and you had the pre-dinner and the post-dinner and, 27 dresses. Not everybody can afford to be a movie star and do that. Not everybody has parents who are massively wealthy that can pay for it. I think weddings turned into a bit of a coming out in a 21st, coming out in a debutante kind of way, a 21st birthday party, and look how well we're all doing kind of thing. And I think they turned into almost a great big mad show. I'm not sure that sometimes the bride and groom even had time to talk to people that were there. So maybe in a way, the positive thing you could take out of COVID is that people will decide on who they really want and not feel obliged to ask, two ladies down the road. But obviously, everybody has their choice. I used to find it very strange that people would call things elopement weddings. When I first heard that trend, I had this vision of people, chucking a ladder up against walls and people legging it to Gretna Green. But I mean, elopement weddings are just a general term that they used in America, which have again come over here. And it just means I'm having a smaller event, so you can't come.
Sorry.
But I mean, I do think there will still be big Greek weddings, big Indian weddings. There will still be those big cultural weddings, but not everybody has to compete with that. Mm-hmm. You should have, it's back to the Excel spreadsheet again. You should fix your budget, decide where was your happy place, if you can do that, get married there, and have people that you really care about with you. Because there has been an awful lot spent with, I mean, I don't know, how many hen do's did you go to one year? My eldest daughter went to 8 one year. That's basically,
I've never done that many.
Party. But that was basically, all of her holidays were taken up by going to people's hen do's. Not everybody can do that.
I think people are definitely going to get a lot more modest about it, because it seems a bit distasteful now to be too showy with things. And actually, I think that is a real positive thing to come out of it. And it's so many of my friends have felt obliged to invite people that, their mum went to school with, and, that somebody that their dad works with. And you think, but you barely even know us. Like, why are we paying for your dinner?
Exactly. That's the bottom line. Back to Excel. and I'm not sponsored by Excel, by the way, but it's that whole thing of you must decide, how much that person costs to get you to come. And I think it's really key. You're trying to buy a house, you're paying off your university things, you might have a family. There's all these other key factors. That doesn't mean to say you won't buy a great dress or have a great venue. It just means the scale might be slightly adjusted. I also think people will want to buy a lot more dresses. I'm going to say off the peg, still from bridal shops, ateliers and boutiques, but in a more off the peg way, or not online unless you're really sure of who you're buying for. I mean, Net-a-Porter has some fabulous designers, but I think you need to know what designer suits you. I think that's quite a controlled way of bridal shopping. I still think you ought to have a fabulous experience, but I do think you've got 250,000 people from last year that haven't managed to get married. It's going to be the same this year. So that's 500,000 brides to be desperate for dresses. Or trouser suits or jumpsuits, but they're all going to want something, and not everyone's going to have an 18-month schedule where they can plan for these things. I think quite a lot of people will want to go into a shop, which will be a novelty anyway, and take it off the peg and maybe pick it up a week later when it's altered. It doesn't mean it's a $4.99 dress. It can be still be a couple of grand or whatever. It just means that I think they want it more immediately.
What do you think about high street dresses, like from the likes of ASOS and H&M and places that do high street bridal?
ASOS is high street, are you?
Yeah. Affordable.
Yeah. We don't have a high street anymore. Yeah. Really dresses. I think some dresses look fantastic, some don't look so good. I've always had good results in pictures, but I don't know. There are so many good off the peg people too. Not everybody wants a great big designer dress. There are some rubbish ones. I would also say never buy on the internet from somewhere that isn't a kind of legitimate. If you see Oscar de la Renta for £120,
it's not.
That's going, this isn't right, okay? Yeah. You can't sew a dress for that amount of money, so don't. It's going to arrive and it's not going to be what you think. So I think there are so many people now that are offering different services, from wedding boutiques that will send you dresses to try on, from people like Needle and Thread. ASOS does have good designers. I think you need to know your shape, know what you want before you do kind of the mail order side. I think there is nothing better than going to an expert and getting them to show you something that perhaps you hadn't have thought of before. And that's actually quite interesting. I think with a lot of TV programs, they've always felt that weddings were an area of fun. And they are fun, but not laughing at somebody. So I think when you take your best friend and your sister to a wedding shop, they shouldn't be mean. They should be honest, but not in a scoring points kind of way. And I think sometimes you can go to bridal shops and they offer you advice and somehow can bring out bits of you that you didn't realise you wanted bringing out. So that's why there is such an amazing group of talented people out there. I have much respect for a lot of bridal shops. Not all of them, but a lot of them are really, really good. There's always horror stories in everything. But
I'm sure there are. You've done some bridal styling yourself, though, in consultancy for brands. How does that, you talk about kind of like highlighting different kind of areas of your body, like with your wedding dress. How does that kind of bridal styling differ to personal styling for fashion?
I think, so models, one thing, real human beings, definitely. That sounds disrespectful for models. Of course, they're real human beings, but they've got everything kind of in the right place. We've all got areas that we don't like, no matter what size or shape we don't. Whether it's your ears, you know, some people are incredibly beautiful, but if you say, oh, why don't you? They go, I love the ears, you know. So I think what you have to do is to listen to the person that comes in when you're having a bridal consultation and listen to what they think they want, show them what they think they want, and then sometimes you can steer them between, because some people have a neurosis about some part of their body, but when they see themselves in something, it kind of goes away. And sometimes I think you need somebody to point it out to you. Like, for example, if I go shopping by myself, I'll buy black. I'll buy black anything. If it's black, I'll buy it. If I go with my youngest daughter, she'll encourage me she'll encourage me to go for colour. I wouldn't choose colour myself because I'd think, oh no, that's a bit loud. You know, I'm not doing that. So sometimes somebody with a different point of view and perspective can show you how to make the best of you, I think. But I don't think you should ever force people into it or go, you know, let's hide those arms, or you can't wear that. I do believe that not everybody can wear everything, though. I know it's old-fashioned, but there's a couple of ads I've seen and I've just thought, no, really? You want to wear that? You know, there are some fabrics are more giving than others, and some should be left behind.
But I suppose there's so many more considerations for bridal styling than there would be maybe for fashion, because of, you know, you've got to consider much more about like how you look in the pictures, and you know how you're going to sit down and eat at dinner like in a dress, and so many more elements to think about.
You've just paid a lot of money for that meal. You want to be able to eat in it. I mean, things like if you have a really, for example, if you do that whole kind of Jennifer Lopez mermaid style dress, a lot of them are really tight to past the knees, laced up the back, look amazing with a giant fishtail kind of thing going on. You're going to have to unlace that to go to toilet, you know, because you can't just pull this thing up over your hips. Your hips are wider than the top of your leg. So make sure the venue you've got has got a big toilet, or go in the descent. It's wide enough for you, but you're still going to have a friend with you to unlace you and lace you up again. You know, I mean, there's practical things that you do have to think about. You can't be in a dress that's so restricting that you can't dance and enjoy yourself. You know, it's about the whole day. That's why dresses sometimes, for example, that have got a lace polo neck underneath. That sounds terrible, but I've got a lace body underneath. Oh, she's wearing a lace polo. No, they've got a body, and you just take off the body in the evening and you've got a strapless dress. So you're covered for your ceremony, or you've got an overskirt that you can take off and you've got trousers underneath. You know, I mean, it's all about being flexible and getting the most out of your outfit, but being you. I mean, it must be terrible for your other half to rock up at the top of the aisle and look and think, who the hell's that? If you look so different to the person that they're, you know, be the best you can be, not a total stranger.
So there you go, got an email. So back to talking about like kind of your editorial and commercial work. You've been involved in styling for both editorial and commercial projects. Do you think in terms of your portfolio, it's been important to have both in your portfolio? And secondly, do you approach those two kind of clients differently to work when you're working with them?
Yeah, I think when you're being approached to do an ad campaign that say nothing to do with, bridal, you're part of that team. I am the stylist. The stylist isn't the art director unless you're asked to be the art director. Then you're the art director and the stylist. So a lot depends on what your role is when you turn up. If my job is to iron a shirt and make sure the jeans stay up, then that's all I'll do. I'm not concerned with the hair or anything else because that's somebody else's job. It sounds very sectioned off, so that I only do my job and somebody else does their job. Whereas on editorial, I am in charge. Mm-hmm. The buck stops with me. So if the photographer's having a bit of a sensitive day, I have to get him back or her back. I can't let any of that happen. I have to produce the goods. Whereas when you work on an ad or just a commercial, for example, somebody else's problem. You're just there to make it all go right and make sure that the bit you're doing is right. So I tended to have a portfolio with all my ads in and one with editorial because they didn't necessarily cross over so much. But then it really does depend because now there's a very thin line between all of ads aren't the same now as ads used to be when I first started out. If you did advertising, you tended not to do editorial. Mm-hmm. So although you make a lot of money, so I would do editorial with photographers just to keep me sane because I used to make a lot of money from, I used to make a lot of money from doing ad campaigns. So that would enable me to not get paid for anything on editorial. I mean, I used to do stuff, this is a long time ago, for like Italian Vogue. And by the time you invoice them, it's really not worth it because it takes so long and tax and so it's not worth it. It wasn't worth it. But I'd do it because who's going to turn down that?
Yeah, incredible. So when you're doing those editorial shoots, like where do you look for inspiration when it comes to planning concepts for shoots? Because it must to some extent have to reflect kind of trends in the bridal and wedding market.
Yeah, it does. It's like what comes first though? It's a bit of a chicken and egg thing, isn't it? Because sometimes we would be known to phone up bridal designers and go back to the big bow thing again. Have you got anything with a really big bow on it? And they'd either go yes or no, or they'd go, yes, I can make you one. So their basic dress would then have a big bow on it. And they might then put that into the collection. Or alternatively, the zeitgeist, all of a sudden you've got big shoulders. Everywhere is big shoulders or drop shoulders or off the shoulder or bare arm. So main fashion does have an influence on bridal. I mean, I'd always look at Dolce & Gabbana. I mean, I want to go to Sicily this year. It's my dream. But I just love the fun. And Moschino and Dior and all of those designers, which, okay, may not, you think, have much bearing from £100,000 couture dress onto a £200 bridal dress, but the inspiration is there, the thought is there, and it's just a trend is a trend. It comes across everything. Everybody had grey, sat in front of a grey cupboard, grey interiors recently. So thank God. It would, it'll pick up on that. Either a fabric will come through from main fashion, or anything. It could be an exhibition that's on a gallery, inspires a Gothic revival in one designer. So you look at a fantastic collection from The Vampire's Wife and you take a dress from there, and then the rest of the story is built around that kind of thing, you know, or a film. If you get enough warning that a film, I mean, I'm sure if we'd still been shooting and it had been normal circumstances, we'd have Bridgerton flipping stories all over the place. And there are one or two, I've done one or two Instagrams with that, but I mean, I think that's how trends start. It's everything around you. I don't think you can just say it comes from a catwalk, or it can come from going to, you know, the Royal Academy or the V&A for an exhibition. You pick up on stuff and other people pick up on stuff. So then you're all talking the same language, and that's what's important. It's a conversation that we all have, but we don't know we're having it, but we all like the same thing at the same time.
So I was reading when I was doing my stalking, when I was coming up with my questions, that you'd recently been involved in the UK Wedding Awards and being a judge, which sounds incredible. What was that like, and what was involved in the judging process?
Oh, that was so hard. We all have different areas. You'd have to do it. So I do it with, say, Michelle, the editor. We do fashion, hair, makeup, accessories, cakes. Then the travel editor would do the venues and the honeymoons and stuff like that. It takes over your life. You have to shortlist them and get them in. So then you look through and you look at them. You try and look at who, for example, best wedding dress designer. Now that's a terrible one to pick for, because what's the best for one person isn't the same as anyone else. I mean, it's a any awards thing. I think for the one person you make very happy, you make a lot of other people unhappy. And I think you try your hardest to be fair and unbiased about it. But people would send in their kind of entry forms for which section they were going for. For Dress of the Year, we used to pick it ourselves, not out of that, just out of anyone. Dress of the Year, we used to get our readers to vote and Instagrammers to say which one they like. It's so subjective, though. I always think, have they got a great, I don't want to say track record, because that implies someone new can't come into it, but have they got a history of getting better? Have they grown? Have their styles grown? Have their, you know, are they doing the best they possibly can at that moment in time? And that's what we looked for. But it is quite difficult, and I'd want to sit under my desk and hide in case. Why didn't you pick me the next day? It is tricky. I think any awards are tricky.
Yeah. But it must have been such an amazing thing to be involved in, though.
Yeah, it is. It is, and the event is really nice when everyone's a winner there. It is really good, and people should be rewarded for their hard work. I don't think we have enough in the bridal industry. I think there's a lot of people that work really hard, and I think we are seen as a bit fluffy and not as hardworking as we could be, or not. I don't think people ever think about anybody in the bridal industry until they actually come to get married, and then all of a sudden they're your new best friends, you know, and you need to know all about who's the best caterer in my area and what's the nicest venue, you know, who can I get a great dress from. Again, going back to bridal trends post-COVID, I hope this awful trend that was around before, with people driving hundreds of miles to get 10p off a dress somewhere, will stop, that people will shop more locally for what they want. I think that's really important, that, you know, you go to an expert that's as close as you can get to you. and not try on. It's not a sport trying on dresses. You all go around hundreds of different branches. God knows what, when you try on so many dresses, there comes a point you can't know what the first one felt like anymore.
No.
So it's the same with awards. When they all come in, you go through the first lot and you go, no, yes. And then you come back to them and go, oh, I wonder why I rejected those. So it is a kind of that you go through day after day after day. It was a very time-consuming event. And we'd all argue as well.
Oh,
that
no.
Was, at the table and go, who likes this? No. Yeah, at the end, it was a battle to get things out. But we all ended up being friends. But, a lot of hard work goes into that.
I can only imagine. And I think, like you say, like there's so many people that kind of overlook the bridal and the wedding industry, and it does employ millions of people, not just in the UK but around the world.
There's things, for example, we really need in this country to get more people sewing. I'm not suggesting you make your own wedding dress, but it's very hard to find great alteration people, great machinists, because we kind of cut out that whole industry years ago. Colleges need to teach more hands-on craft. There's nothing wrong with being a pattern cutter. Not everyone could be Karl Lagerfeld and sit in an office and sketch in their atelier. You have to have everybody else that can do everything. So to be a good designer, you do know how to sew, and you should be taught how to sew. You should be taught how to cut patterns. We need to get more, I think, back in school even, sewing. I did a GCSE in sewing. I made the most awful skirt, but it made me appreciate
how good it is.
It is. It's the same as on press days in the past. I remember going to a press day at Swarovski where you could make a bracelet, and they had people telling you how to do it, and they told me what to do with my left hand and they told me what to do with my right hand. And quite frankly, the bracelet at the end, if one of my children had brought it home, I'd go, lovely. It was so rubbish, it just wasn't true. And that's why I respect jewelers and all of these people. Handcrafted skills are amazing. People that can sew and create jewelry and make tiaras and things like that, they've got an incredible talent, and we need to applaud their talent and get more people doing it.
So you recently also were involved in a campaign on Instagram, weren't you? It was Stand Up for Weddings campaign. And obviously the industry is super struggled over the last year. How do you see the industry recovering?
Well, the UK Wedding Organisation and Stand Up for Weddings, these people are fighting on behalf of everybody. I'm merely a person that goes, look, this is happening. I haven't got the time. I mean, they're lobbying, MPs. I think it's like there's 38 MPs that have signed up. Everybody, it's a process that has to be done properly. We can protest as much as we like, but it really does have to be addressed. And we can't come across as silly women, which again, I know it sounds awful, but I do think people think of women in bridal as not being hardened business women sometimes, and they really are. And there's so many people working so hard on these causes. So I was merely a conduit for that. I think we need to get weddings back. We need a clear roadmap. I mean, that's all anybody can ask for. Once we know what we're planning for and how many we're planning for, then everybody can get back into gear. But so many people have shut down and had to close and had to make people redundant. Not everybody was furloughed. You still, if you've got an events agency, people are still planning for the future. So you've still got to have the infrastructure to carry on planning those things, even though you've got no income coming in, and you've had no income for the last year. apart from the odd sporadic, quick, I can run down the aisle kind of thing. So people have real problems and real issues that need to be addressed. And it's going to take everybody a long time to get over this. So I think we need to know when everything can start up again. And there's always unfairness. And I mean, at the moment, people are saying, oh, you can go to a football match, but you can't have more than, 30 people at a wedding. There's inconsistencies, but I think I have to sit back and wait until I'm told what's the right thing. In the meanwhile, I can offer you where to go for great dresses, where to go for great cakes, flowers, anything. I can show you what is coming, but I can't change government legislation myself. I can just applaud people that are doing it on our behalf.
And there's so many incredible people. And you mentioned earlier about, working with more female photographers, and there's kind of like loads of female talent coming out in the industry, which is already, more female dominated industry, but there's so much talent that we need to support. How do you think that the bridal industry is leading the way for those female entrepreneurs?
Yes, I think there always have been. I mean, I always used to find it weird when I used to go to lingerie exhibitions that there were so many men involved in lingerie. I was like, well, how do you know how this fits and how it feels? And I think that's the thing. That's not to say men can't design bridal dresses at all. But I do think there are an awful lot of brilliant women out there that have been leading the way for all of us and clearing a path for other people in the future to have opportunities in front of them. And that when they go to the bank and say, I want to open up a bridal shop, they're not reliant on a family handout or anything, that they can present a good business plan and people will listen. It's not some frivolous, silly, girly thing. I think hopefully we've moved on from all of that.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I feel like you've just shared so many insights about your career and the wedding industry as a whole, and I've loved talking to you. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome anytime.
Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon. Take care, Peta.
See you soon.